My girlfriend's experiment trapped me in a female body. My name is Daniel Hayes, 23 years old, a college dropout, part-time barista, and full-time disappointment to my parents, or at least, that's how I always thought of myself. On the surface, I was just another ordinary guy, tallish, skinny, perpetually broke, and living in a shoebox apartment with my girlfriend, Emma. But under the surface? That's where the cracks in my so-called normal life began to show. I had a secret. It wasn't one of those small quirks you can laugh about. It wasn't a silly habit or an embarrassing hobby. No, this was the kind of secret that could flip my entire world upside down if the wrong person ever found out. You see, I liked dressing differently. Women's clothes, skirts, blouses, lingerie, anything that shimmered with softness and color in contrast to the dull grays and blacks of my usual wardrobe. I never really thought of myself as girly or feminine growing up. I played soccer in middle school, I wasted weekends grinding levels in video games, and I went through high school with the awkward shuffle of someone who never quite fit into any crowd. But in the quiet moments, alone in my room when nobody was home, I'd dig through thrift store bags or sneak online purchases and try things on. At first, it was about curiosity. The fabric against my skin felt electric, strange, and intoxicating. But as I grew older, it became more than that. A kind of release. A way to step out of the awkward, fumbling Daniel that everyone saw and into someone freer. Someone prettier. Someone who didn't carry the weight of disappointing expectations. The thrill was always coupled with fear. Fear of being discovered. Fear of someone laughing, mocking, or worse, leaving me. Especially Emma. Emma was everything I wasn't. Smart, confident, always 3 steps ahead of the world. She was a graduate student in biochemistry, juggling her research and teaching assistantship while I was still figuring out what to do with my half-finished degree. She was the kind of girl people stared at when she walked into a room, not just because she was beautiful, but because she carried herself like she belonged anywhere she wanted to be. And somehow, she had chosen me. Our relationship wasn't perfect, but it was real. Emma liked to tease me about my messy habits, my poor time management, and the way I always burned toast no matter how careful I tried to be. But under the teasing, I knew she cared. She always believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself, which made my secret harder to bear. Emma lived for discovery. Science was in her blood. She'd spend late nights hunched over her laptop, muttering about chemical compounds, sketching formulas on sticky notes that she plastered all over our fridge. She wanted to change the world. I just wanted to survive it. That difference created tension between us sometimes. She'd push me to try harder, to think bigger, while I wanted to stay in my comfort zone. And so, I never told her about my crossdressing. How could I? Would she see me as weak, a joke, some kind of fraud? Our apartment became both a safe haven and a ticking time bomb. I had one drawer, just one, hidden under my side of the bed, packed with carefully folded skirts, stockings, and a wig I had ordered online one summer night after too much wine. I never wore them when Emma was home. Only when I was alone, when the sound of her footsteps was far away and the risk of discovery was low. But no secret stays buried forever. One night, Emma came home buzzing with excitement. I was sitting at the kitchen counter, pretending to scroll through my phone, when she slammed a thick notebook onto the table. "Danny, you won't believe this," she said, her eyes glittering in that way they always did when she was on the edge of something big. "I think I'm onto something. Something huge." I raised an eyebrow. "Bigger than the protein folding project?"
She grinned.
"Bigger." She flipped open the notebook, revealing page after page of complex formulas and sketches that looked like alien language to me. "I've been working on a biochemical serum. Something experimental. If it works, it could change everything we know about physical adaptability and gender expression." I blinked. In English?" She laughed. "Basically a way to temporarily alter certain traits in the human body. Like a shift. Physical transformation at the cellular level." I tried to chuckle, but my throat tightened. "That sounds insane. Like, comic book insane." "Exactly," she said, eyes sparkling. "But what if it isn't just fiction?" I shrugged. trying to play it off, but her words lodged in my mind like a splinter. Transformation. Shifting. A body that could change. Little did I know, her experiment would collide with my secret in ways I could never have imagined. Because Emma wasn't just curious about science anymore.
She was curious about me.
And before long, my hidden drawer wouldn't be hidden anymore. The days that followed were heavy with silence. My voice was gone, not just from my throat, but from my spirit. I would walk through the square and see the villagers look at me, whispering, wondering if I still carried the strength to endure, or if I had already broken. At night, I lay on the straw mat in my chamber, staring at the wooden beams above, hearing the echo of that whip again and again. The sting of it had faded from my skin, but its echo carved deeper inside me than any lash ever could. And then one evening, I heard footsteps outside my door. They were deliberate, slow, heavy, as if someone carried both power and intent. The latch lifted. My heart froze. A hooded figure entered, their face hidden by the flickering torchlight. The air thickened around me, heavy with dread. They did not speak. They only placed a sealed parchment upon my table, its wax stamped with the crest of the very council that had condemned me. I dared not touch it. My hands trembled. The figure leaned close, their whisper cold against my ear. Your silence has bought you time, but it has also sealed your fate. Tomorrow, the village will decide if you walk free or if you burn. The door closed behind them, leaving me alone with the parchment and the promise of fire. Would I ever be free of this torment, or had my silence become the very noose that would end me? The torches burned lower, casting long, quivering shadows across the square. The villagers, who had once roared with accusations and jeers, now stood quieter, as if my suffering had wrung even their throats dry. My body trembled, every lash and stone having carved its testimony into my skin, but still I breathed. Still I endured. The priest stepped closer, his voice trembling as he declared me beyond redemption. Yet in his eyes I caught something, doubt or perhaps fear. For though they had broken my body, my spirit still clung to its truth. I lifted my face, blood and tears mingling, and whispered into the night, "If God sees me, let him judge me, not you." The words fell heavy in the silence. Some villagers shifted uneasily. A mother pulled her child closer. My tormentors tightened their grip on their whips, as if my fragile defiance threatened to undo the order they lived by. The executioner raised his arm one final time, his shadow stretching like death itself across the cobblestones. My heart pounded, my lips quivered in silent prayer, and just as the final strike descended, midnight, a sound that broke through the square like thunder. The crowd gasped, some crossing themselves, others backing away as if the very heavens had intervened. And in that moment, with the echo of those bells carrying my name to the sky, everything stopped. Her voice turned into a broken whisper, trembling against the cold air as she clutched her chest. "I was their lesson," she said, "their warning to every girl who dared to dream too loud, to walk too free, to love too boldly." Her body swayed, blood still drying against the rough ropes, and for a moment it seemed as though even the heavens mourned, the clouds thickening above her in silence. But then, shouts erupted at the far edge of the square. A figure in dark armor pushed through the crowd, his sword flashing under the dying sun. Gasps spread like wildfire as the villagers parted. The man's voice rang out, sharp as steel. "Release her, or face me." The people froze. The guards shifted uneasily. And the broken girl, half unconscious, lifted her head just enough to see him through the blur of her tears. Her lips moved soundlessly, forming a single word, hope. And then, blackness swallowed her. The story cut off there, leaving only silence, only the unbearable weight of what might come next. When her world went dark, she thought it was the end, yet warmth stirred against her cheek. A voice, low and urgent, reached her through the haze. "Breathe, my lady, stay with me." Her lashes fluttered, heavy as stone, and in the blur of half-consciousness she saw him. the knight who dared defy them. His armor was dented, his jaw bruised, yet his eyes burned with a fire she thought long dead in men. Around them, chaos reigned. The villagers scattered in terror, torn between fear of punishment and the thrill of rebellion. Guards rushed with raised spears, but the knight's blade met them with brutal grace. Steel clashed, men fell, and for the first time, the balance of power trembled. He cut through her bindings, catching her before her body collapsed onto the stones. Her blood stained his hands, yet he held her as if she were made of glass. The knight whispered close to her ear, voice steady though his heart thundered. "They will not break you, not while I draw breath." And for the first time in her cursed trial, she felt the ghost of something she thought forever stolen. Not victory, not freedom, but belief. The voices outside the door grew louder. My classmates were pounding and shouting, but then, silence. A heavy silence that made the hair on my neck rise. I pressed my ear to the door, trembling. That's when I heard it, the slow creak of boots against the wooden floor. Not the footsteps of students. These were heavier, deliberate, purposeful. Someone was inside the school. "Stay quiet," I whispered to myself, hugging the scholarship documents tighter. The doorknob rattled.
Once. Twice.
Then it stopped. My heart was racing so violently, I thought it would give me away. Then scratching. A key sliding into the lock. The door clicked open, but no one entered. Instead, a shadow stretched across the threshold. A tall figure stood there, face hidden, but I could feel his eyes piercing straight into me. And then, in a chilling voice, he whispered, "I know who you really are." The candle flickered out. Darkness swallowed the room. The darkness was suffocating. I couldn't even see my own trembling hands clutching the papers against my chest. My breath echoed too loudly in the silence, like it didn't belong to me anymore. The shadow lingered in the doorway, unmoving. My body screamed at me to run, but my legs were frozen. Finally, the man stepped forward, his boots striking the wooden floor with an icy certainty. The smell of damp leather and smoke clung to him, filling the air around me. I stumbled back, my spine pressing against the cold wall. Who are you?" My voice cracked, but I forced it out. The figure bent slightly, lowering his face into the faint line of moonlight slicing through the window. My stomach twisted. It wasn't a stranger. It was the headmaster. His expression was calm, but his eyes burned with something sinister, knowledge, power, and a terrifying satisfaction. "You thought you could play this little game forever," he murmured. "Pretending to be what you are not, fooling everyone, taking what was never meant for you." I shook my head furiously. No, you don't understand. I had no choice. It was the only way." He took another step closer, his shadow now swallowing mine completely. "You lied. And lies always come with a price." I could barely breathe. Every secret, every risk I had taken, every desperate moment of disguise, it all led here, to this confrontation. And then he leaned in so close I could feel his cold breath against my ear. "You're going to keep being my pretty little lie," he whispered, "or the world will know the truth." My knees almost buckled. The scholarship, my life, my entire identity, all of it was now in his hands. And then everything unraveled. The celebration of Alex's so-called success had reached its peak. Bright lights, reporters, congratulatory speeches. He stood there in the center of it all, the girl he had pretended to be, wearing the dress that made everyone believe his lie was reality. For a moment, he almost convinced himself it was reality. But just as he smiled for the cameras, a voice rang out, sharp, cutting, and cruel. "She's not who you think she is. She's a fraud." The room froze. Every eye turned. Alex's heart stopped. The words echoed louder than the applause had minutes before. He tried to breathe, to say something, anything, but his throat locked. His secret, the one he fought so hard to protect, was suddenly dangling over him like a blade ready to fall. The whispers started, spreading like fire in dry grass. Some faces looked shocked, others betrayed, and a few intrigued. And in that sea of judgment, Alex realized he could no longer tell who was friend and who was foe. The lie he thought he could control had grown too big. And now, someone out there wanted it to destroy him. The room spun around me as the whispers grew sharper, slicing through me like knives. I wanted to scream that it wasn't true, that I wasn't a fraud, that I was the girl they believed in. But deep down, I knew. I had built this life on a lie. The applause was gone. The flashing lights no longer felt like glory, but like shackles, trapping me in the image I could never escape. I thought pretending would only last a while, just long enough to win the scholarship, to buy myself time. But the lie became my prison, and the girl I created became the only version of me the world would ever accept. Tears burned in my eyes as I forced a smile, bowing one last time before the crowd. In that moment, I understood the cruel truth. I hadn't just faked being a girl to win a scholarship. I had faked my way into a life I could never undo. And now there was no turning back. The lie was permanent,